I'm very happy to be here today in LA to do this drum clinic for you guys. I'm very excited to see that all you could make it out here, despite all the LA traffic and everything that I've heard is not the easiest. So, just a really quick background. I'm a drummer from Sweden. I'm 22, almost 23 years old now, and I've been playing drums for about 8 or 9 years. And recently I started getting into doing clinics because it combines everything I love about drumming. It allows me to teach, it allows me to show off a little bit and have some fun and just kind of jam around and meet all of the awesome people that come out to these clinics. So the little clinic that I'm going to do today is going to focus mainly on creativity, and that's the main thing I want to talk about today, is giving you guys tips and advice and kind of methods for how you can be more creative behind the drums, mainly in terms of fills. That's going to be the main thing, and a lot of fills and a lot of stuff like that. Hopefully it will be applicable to everyone, no matter if you're a beginner or you're a super awesome drummer. You should be able to take something away from this clinic.
We don't necessarily always need someone to keep giving us new stuff all the time, because there's so much we have in us that we can change around, we can orchestrate, and we can move around, and we can kind of explore, again, self-exploration, and you can get so much out of it. And by doing that, you learn a bunch of different things. You learn to be creative, you learn to be spontaneous in the things that you come up with, you learn to get the most out of the things that you learn from elsewhere, and you learn to find your own style. You learn to become the best version of yourself, not the best version of some exercise in some book, right? You become your own drummer. And I use this concept of self-exploration in the way that I practice. So me, like when I sit down to practice, I don't know about you guys do it, but I'm not a very organized person. When I sit down to practice, I don't have a schedule. Like I don't have 15 minutes of this exercise and da da. I know some drummers do, and if you're one of those, then more power to you. I wish I could do that. But my way of tackling that has always been to just kind of sit down and play what makes sense for me that day, in that moment. So when I sit down to play drums to practice, it usually starts off something like this. Whoop. I have a kind of a method for breaking down fills into 3 different parts, which is the start of a fill, and the middle of a fill, and the end of a fill, because all of those parts of the fill you need to treat differently, because they have different varying impacts on what you're actually playing. Before that, I want to play a little bit more for you guys, and I'm gonna really go out on a limb, and I'm just gonna improvise and really challenge myself. I want to show you what I was talking about, so I'm just gonna make myself fully vulnerable here, and I'm gonna mess up so much because I'm just gonna try to take a lot of risks, because risk taking is a big part of everything that I've talked about so far. So let me just do that for a little bit, and we're just kind of see what happens. I just want to accentuate what I was talking about before. So I'll just mess around, and maybe I'll come up with something cool, or who knows? Maybe we can use that later. We'll see what happens. Okay? So bear with me here. So like that, the last thing there, that I really enjoyed. I swear to God, I've never played that exact thing before. So it's funny that this actually worked now that I wanted it to work. You see what I mean? I messed up a lot in the beginning because I didn't want to play it to sound good. That basically it happened one time, but since I was paying attention, I immediately caught on to it. I was like, hey, that one thing I just did, that was cool. Let's try to repeat that. And it became... If I wasn't paying attention, if I was just zoning out, that would have happened one time, I would have kept playing, and I'd never have done it again, and I probably wouldn't have came up with this groove. And this is something I enjoy that. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna practice more and see what I can do with that. You see what I mean? Yeah. By doing this, it's funny. It's funny how you guys are lucky it actually worked this time, because it doesn't always do that. Just by pure accident, yeah. So I'll have a pattern that I predetermined, something like imagine I have a little box of favorite patterns. I'll pull one out and I'll play it. I know it's going to turn out well every time because I'm comfortable starting from that point. One of those patterns is a more recent one, again because of double strokes, is just doing pick, pick. So, and that actually you want to play so that you land with the snare on the downbeat. So you start on the and 4. So you're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, double strokes, 2, 3, 4, and that kind of just kind of pushes you into feel like. Like whatever you improvise after that is probably going to sound fairly similar every time because you start from the same point. What the main thing about this fill is not only because it has a different subdivision in the beginning, but it actually puts, remember I was saying my snare, like the snare becomes the downbeat, which basically means beat 1, I start the fill with the left-hand lead. That in its own has a huge impact on how everything else follows afterwards, because my normal patterns are not going to work. I have to come up with different patterns, and I have to switch around my hands to end the fill in a proper way. So you see what I mean? That's going to impact the entire fill. Every time I play like that, it's going to turn out a little different. And the middle section of the fill, or before that, another pattern, and I want to say again, these are like my specific patterns that I've come up with that work for me. If you want to try them for yourself, go ahead. But I think you're gonna want to come up with your own patterns that make sense for you. Again, another pattern I like to use a lot kind of actually came from the same. You remember I was talking before about switching hands? back and forth. It came actually from the same approach. I think even in the same session when I was working on that, I came up with this as well, where I'm going to show you the pattern. It's right, left, left, left. So, and you want to put a kick in the beginning, and if you loop that, it actually becomes a pretty cool groove. Like, because you still have the downbeat, like 1, 2, 3, 4. And this has become one of the patterns I like to use a lot when I want to play fills that are pretty fast, like 30-second note kind of, it's going pretty crazy, because it starts me off in a way that makes sense. Like I can do this pattern I just played, but super quick, and that makes me know where I started. I have a comfortable start, because if I'm gonna improvise a 30-second note fill that fast, there's so many notes happening so quick, and it's all gonna be improvised, chances are I'm gonna mess up in that first split second, and that's gonna throw me off for the entire rest of the fill. But if I start with something I know, I can do that, 100 out of 100 times, and it's gonna, or at least 99, it's gonna sound good, So if I do that, most of those fills turned out the way I wanted them to, because I started them all with that exact same pattern, but the fills still kind of sounded different, right? But they still had the same kind of vibe to them, because they all started the same way, and that makes me comfortably able to play fast fills when I want to. I just start with that pattern, and I know it's going to work out. Does that make sense? Like this whole approach of starting where you're comfortable? So that's starting patterns. Think of it like filling in the gaps is usually what happens in the middle of the fill. You have some accents that you move around, and you kind of want to fill in the gaps maybe with your left hand to keep the fill intact. And this goes for linear playing in general. So for example, let's take a fill like, Phil Collins in this, I think it's that song where like, yeah. That, or at least something similar. That's a pretty straightforward fill. It sounds, you can use that to great effect on its own, like flam it up, like. Sometimes less is more. You don't have to go crazy. You can do that and it's just fine. But if you want to have, like I want to talk about this, the approach of, imagine with this fill, if I remove a single one of those strokes, I change the fill, right? Because every one of those strokes are so important. They're critical information. If I remove one or if I change one, the feel of the entire fill changes. But what I'm trying to tell you is you need to identify this when you're playing the different fills and the different phrasings that you're creating. Which strokes are important, and which strokes do you need to keep, and which ones can you mess around with to kind of fill the gaps or space things out. So what I'm saying is, imagine this fill, and I want to fill it up, so I don't want to have all that space in between. If I play fast and I fill in those strokes in between, it would sound something like this instead. It's way busier now, right? There's so much going on, but you can still hear it's essentially the same fill, because the main information hasn't changed. I'm still doing it. I've just decided to fill in some gaps in between. And this is the approach that I'm using for the middle section of fills, where it's way more improvised, where sometimes my right hand is just like, my right hand is just bouncing around the kit, and my left hand and my foot is kind of filling the gaps. So what I'm thinking of as I'm doing that is, where do I want to phrase things and how do I want to phrase? So no matter if you do this like at a super beginner level, just doing a simple fill and just trying to fit one or two extra notes in between, or if you're working out these super crazy chops, the point is the same. Think about which strokes matter, which are important, and which strokes can you kind of mess around with. Hopefully this will give you some inspiration to how to kind of mess with the middle section of the fill, where it's usually much more improvised, unless you have a whole fill thought out. And then we have the end, where the end of a fill, I like to mess around with not necessarily ending on beat 1, because that's like, if I ask any of you guys to come up in here and play a fill right now, it would probably start on beat 1 and it would probably end on beat 1. It would be something like, hey, come up and play a fill. It would be like, I mean, and that's totally fine, because that's what we're used to. It's a good framework to work, it's a good blueprint to work with. Start on B1, end on B1, because it's very clear and everyone knows what's happening. You're not confusing. But sometimes that gets a little stale, like we keep doing the same thing over and over, because we never explore our horizons. So what I like to do for the end of a fill is think about, do I have to end on B1? Maybe let's try ending on B2. So I'll go 1 extra beat long in every fill. So if I do that, it will sound something more like this, maybe. I'm extending my phrasing to go longer than the bar is, and I'll end the fill like with on the 2. And that changes, again, every single fill I did now, I just improvised, I had that in mind. So my fills probably changed, you know, they came out a certain way because I was already thinking about how I wanted to end it. So see what I mean? The start of the fill and the end of the fill has the biggest impact. Everything in between is just kind of improvised and works around making that start and making that end work together. The last little things I wanted to talk about. I know that this is a more specific thing that you can actually use for creating fills, like specific in terms of patterns. And again, this you can use if you're a beginner, you can use it if you're a pro. It will the concept will apply. And this is the concept of using odd groupings. So a common example of odd grouping, I'm sure you guys recognize, is like if you turn on the radio right now, chances are very high you'll hear a song that uses this. Especially in certain genres, special cultures of music, that's more or less very common, which is the use of phrasing things like 3 plus 3 plus 2. And what I mean by that is, for example, if we're counting 16th notes, so that means we're counting 4 strokes per downbeat. So this is a pulse, and we're counting basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The speed at which I'm counting now is 16th notes. I play 16th notes in 1 bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way up to 16. If we phrase that instead as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it changes the phrasing. It's still the same amount of strokes. 4 plus 4 is 8, or 3 plus 3 plus 2 is also 8. So if we do that instead of, so imagine I do like this. This is my pulse, and I accent every 4th 16th note on my hi-hat. That would be on the pulse. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm actually every 1. But if I instead do the 3 plus 3 plus 2 thing, you'll hear a pattern that you'll probably recognize. Sounds familiar, right? It's a very, very common rhythm in popular music. Another odd grouping that I like to use a lot is groups of 5. And I want to show you a little fill you could try if you want to try it, which kind of lays the groundwork for what you can do with this. Same thing here. Imagine we have 16 16th notes. That's 1 bar. So we have 4 downbeats, 4 16th notes per each. That's 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. That's 16. So 16 16th notes. We have 1 bar, all full, all done. We don't have to phrase it as 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 like I just showed you. We could do 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 1. Right? 5 plus 5 plus 5 is 15, and we have 1 left, and that's 16. So if we do that, now we know we can phrase our pattern like that. Now let's just come up with a pattern. 5 strokes. We have 5 strokes available, so let's find places to hit with our sticks for a total of 5 strokes. One pattern I like to use a lot is right, left, right, left, left. Accent the first 3 strokes and also put a bass drum on it. So left, right, left, left. 5 strokes. And when I get to the end, I loop it around. phrased properly, if I play the 16th notes, I can do that again. Remember, 5 plus 5 plus 5, that's 3 times, and then I have 1 note at the end. So if I do this 3 times, and then I just add 1 more stroke, let's do a little bass drum. That's full bar, and then I can hit the 1. If we do it that way, we get the entire fill, slow, sounds like this. And that all together evens out. So in a group context, that would be more like. See what I mean? Now I'm messing around, I'm kind of implying another time, like another tempo almost, because of the way I phrase things. This is a concept you can have a lot of fun with. Just that it's very simple. When you break it down, it's just that. How many strokes do you have available? How can you split them up and still have the same end product? And once you establish that, for in this case, 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 1, that's 16. Simple maths. Once you've established that, now you just figure out a pattern of 5 strokes, and you can put that in the right amount of times, add 1 more stroke, and ta-da, you have a fill. Now you just gotta learn how to play it properly, and there you go. And this has endless possibilities. And again, I want to show you something that I'm working on. So this is going to be a little bit more tricky thing. An extension of this whole odd grouping thing, as of this last little thing I want to show you guys. I was going to make a video, and this is a quick backstory. I was going to make a video on Instagram for a while ago. I came up with this awesome fill. I was like, yeah, man, this sounds cool. This is unique. This is cool, super cool fill. I think I even recorded the video and everything. And once I wanted to post it on Instagram, I was like, hey, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I can't write down, because usually I write like, play this fill in 16th notes and then da da da, and it's very simple, like how you play it. But this, I just, for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. So what I eventually noticed was what I'm doing is I'm basically playing a subdivision, so like 16 notes or 8 notes, something like that technically doesn't exist on paper. Like there's no notation that would work for this, but you can still play it if you just do it right. Imagine we play like this. If this is my pulse, I could phrase 1, 2, 3, 4. I could do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like this. You'll hear what I mean. 1, 2, 3, 4. It works evenly, that phrasing. So if I wanted to, remember I was talking about before about filling in the gaps. This is the main information here. I could fill in the gaps here and it will still essentially be the same thing. And a way that would be smart to fill out the gaps would be to fill the 16th notes that I'm not playing. So that would be 2 ghost notes on my snare in between everyone, and at the end I'll do 2 ghost notes on the bass drum. I'll show you like. It's still the same fill. I still have the same information. But this concept I discovered was, do I have to do what makes sense with the grouping? Can't I like fit any amount of strokes in between there? As long as I keep this, I should be able to fill the gaps with whatever I want. It doesn't even have to make sense on paper, but it's still going to sound, it's going to still be listenable because people can still hear, which is what I'm trying to convey anyway. So what I came up with was, imagine doing groups of 5 again, but in the time frame of where it's supposed to be just 3. Does it make sense? Like in between every one of these strokes, it makes sense to put 2 more strokes, right? Because then we get 3. So we get 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But I could do 5. I just have to play the strokes faster as long as I listen for the timing of this. This can make sense. So let's do the same pattern. You remember I was showing? Right, left, left. So like that. And I could do you see what I mean? Like I still have the same. And it makes sense. It sounds a little weird, but you see what I mean? You can still hear what's happening. You still have the pulse, you still have... And if you were to notate this, you wouldn't be able to, because on paper, this speed at which I'm playing to related to the pulse doesn't exist. I'm playing quintuplets in a space where it's supposed to be 360. No, like, it doesn't make sense. You see what I mean? So this is something I've recently started exploring, which is a ton of fun.